What is economics about primarily then? It's about the integrity and strength of family life.
What the scripture says, though, that every man could be under his own fig tree. In other words, the sign of God's blessing was that every man was with his family under his own fig tree. Right. Land ownership, right. Peace. My fig tree is the source of food for us, and we're not slaves to the government or to the Republican Party.
That means what you're saying is the family is self-sufficient. In other words,
yes.
The family must be regarded as a unit that, in the natural scheme of things, is intended to be self-sufficient.
And should have primacy on a great number of levels over civil government. The order of the four governments that God created in the book of Genesis, you have family government, you have self-government, you have church government, and then you have civil government. Civil government was created last, and church family or family government arguably would be first, either that or self-government. So when the government becomes destructive to the family, which is what it is doing right now, it has abandoned its God-given role, number one, and therefore has become hostile to God himself.
Right. Now, what you have just said, put in declaration terms, is easy.
When a government becomes...
To secure these rights, government exists to make the rights safe. So if you're doing what's right according to the natural law and will of God, and one of the things that's right is the very first command-like instruction that God gave to Adam and Eve.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply. The first thing he focused them on was the commission, as it were, or mandate, to be fruitful and multiply, to procreate and fill the earth, right? So the family is fundamental. The family is like the first kind of mandate of God. And if government exists to secure these rights, the elementary right would be the rights that are involved in family life. For instance, there is involved in family life a connection. Call it an obligation, call it a tie. But that tie is literally represented physically, isn't it? When the child comes out of the womb, there's a tie between the child and the mother. That literally corresponds to the word ligare, to be bound together. Okay, and obligation and religion and words like this, all of them have to do with being bound in some way to something, bound to God, bound to one another. Well, parents are bound to their children. Children are bound to their parents by ties of obligation that reflect what God has made the substance of our nature, how we preserve ourselves, how we perpetuate the species. All this has to do with how human nature continues through time to exist. So government exists to secure that.
Yes.
Which of the religious folks you know, unhappily, and I will exclude ourselves, who goes out there to talk about what's going on with gay marriage and so forth, points out that you can't force people to accept an understanding of marriage that destroys the essential nature.
Which is
and doesn't respect
God-defined.
That essential nature. And when people say, well, that's not in the Constitution, I always beg to differ with them. No, I'm sorry. Which came first, according to the founders, the unalienable rights or rights that government institutes by law? Well, the answer is obvious. The unalienable rights endowed by God come before or prior to any rights established in human law. In Amendment 9 to the Constitution, we find an instruction that is a prohibition, it's part of the Constitution, that says that nothing in this Constitution, nothing in the enumeration of rights in this Constitution shall be construed to deny or disparage other rights retained by the people. What would be the first set of rights that people had from not just the beginning of the polity or the establishment of the Constitution or the beginning of the colonies or anything, but from the beginning of the world when man was first created? What rights were they? Unalienable rights, the rights that come from God. So of course you can't deny or disparage unalienable rights. It's unconstitutional. Everything they're doing with the courts and on gay marriage and trying to force people to accept and normalize homosexuality, insofar as it interferes with the understanding of marriage and family rooted in the command to procreate and in the activity of procreation, it's all unconstitutional as well as ungodly.
Well, I hope that you are having as much fun watching this as I did recording it with Dr. Keys. If you did not see the first installment, this is a 5-part series, you can go to our website and watch every segment in its entirety. And there's a lot of other material there that are designed to help with how you think. Because right acting usually has to be preceded by right thinking. And that's a critical element of why we do this program. We want you to become a force for righteousness in the earth. And that means your mind, our minds, have to be properly formed for the task at hand. This is the voice of resistance, and I want you to be a part of the resistance.